Yeah, hello everybody. I'm Steve Levine. I'm sort of the new guy. Well, I used to be the young guy, but not so much anymore. We got some new blood in here. But anyhow, I've been using OS2 for a while, and they asked me to talk a little bit about Snap. Okay, is anybody here not using Snap? Or, okay. So actually, we have quite a few folks that are still able to use Snap on their hardware. Now, how many of you are using accelerator drivers? How many of you are using Snap with just grad?
Well,
pick one.
Set it up, I don't know.
Not your, not
well, no, I mean, you said how many are using this, how many are using
I
that?
think
Well, what are we supposed to do?
panorama.
Right hand, left hand?
Or go yes, no.
Okay.
I didn't know.
I'll figure it out.
I got the
hardware you chose,
last
but I
card
let you choose.
specifically that was accelerated, okay? So.
You mean of a specific model?
Well,
There's really more than one.
it's a
one series of cards
it's a PCI Express card,
that- Right,
okay?
and it's probably ATI.
Yeah, it could be. It's there. The DOS part was not finished, so you cannot have Windows DOS or Windows, but you can have full screen. Although you can't have it the way they say, you just have to do it a little bit differently. But it works.
There you go.
What, is that panorama, is that part of Snap, or is that a different driver for the graphics?
No, we have two major driver architectures. Now, there's a whole bunch of custom drivers that are specific to a given card. What both Snap and Grad provide is basically device independence in different ways. There are people that are still using the Matrox drivers because they got old hardware, they got some Matrox cards that haven't burned up, so they use that. Those are an example of a driver that is specific to a given card and given series of cards. Both Panorama and Snap are solutions that will run basically on any card. Now, there's some limitations, but for most of the cards that are available today, those limitations don't matter. It just changed the performance. Okay, what is Snap? It's System Neutral Access Protocol. Typical computer name, right?
Yeah.
And basically, it's neutral in two ways. First of all, it's device independent. It's supposed to work on any card that has a certain set of features. Now, it'll work better on a card that it can accelerate, but it works on, for everybody that uses Snap, they know it works on basically anything. Now, it's also platform independent. We use it on OS2, but it started its life as a set of DOS device drivers. It grew into doing OS2, Windows, Linux, Unix, and embedded systems that you guys never heard of probably. What we have is we have a license for we being Arca Noae. I'm never going to call it Noae. I'm going to have to talk to Roger about that and get his accent fixed. But we've licensed the OS2 and the DOS code, and we don't know if we're ever going to do a build DOS build, but we have it. If we ever have a good need for it, maybe we'll be able to solve some problems if there's enough incentive for people that really need acceleration in their DOS VDMs because they're special cases, or maybe even Windows too. But it's a matter of need. Okay. Where'd Snap come from? Developed by a fellow by the name of Kendall, Bennett, and Scitech Software. They did a bunch of other stuff, but really no one here, I suspect, knows them for anything but Snap. He's moved on to other things. He tried to do web development for a while, but I think he's running a bicycle shop now.
They do radio-controlled cars.
Yeah, that's right. But for a
drones
while there,
and
he had a bike shop, and then it turned into the radio-controlled stuff happens. But my guess is he's sort of like an engineer, software guy / entrepreneur who can do a whole bunch of that stuff. Now, as I mentioned, the thing originally came to life as DOS device drivers, because any of you who use DOS and tried to do video stuff like, oh, WordPerfect when we got a GUI version of WordPerfect, the video left a little to be desired. And so, then he started out doing, VESA's been around forever, he started out doing VESA, occupies drivers, and started doing acceleration, and he had a market there. And it just grew, and it supported the development of the OS2 stuff when that came along, and so on and so forth. And as I mentioned, the platforms, DOS, OS2, Unix, I think he's got Wind River, a bunch of stuff. One of these days I gotta go through the full list, because when they gave the source to us, they did it for the folks that own it now, which I'll talk about in a little bit. Their source control leaves a little bit to be desired. Because they bought all this source, they used it for the stuff they used it for, and they never used the rest of it. So we've got license files for every customer they ever had. We're not licensed to look at them, but we have the code. So it's pretty funny. Now, one of the things that never really got totally finished, originally it was just for video, but it was system neutral, and it turned out it was hardware neutral too. So there's actually full support in there for doing device-independent audio. Same technology, and so on and so forth. And they actually had some drivers that built more. They didn't have the same breadth of support because they just never got that far. Because at the time when Scitech was going full force, they pretty much had support for everything but the oddball cards. And we've had a license since about 2015. You might ask, well, how come we're almost in 2017 and we don't have a distribution yet? And that's our developers and priorities. Since everybody has a video card that works, and we have other stuff going on, we were just waiting for the guys on the development team to ask us questions, and they didn't. One day David got bored and decided he was going to build the thing, and of course 3 days later he had to build, and we'll probably have alphas out. We haven't scheduled it yet, but we were ready to start working on alphas.
Did you ever hear from the developers?
Well, I know him. I know McCall. Sure. I never knew Kendall very well, but basically I was supposed to go to McCall's wedding, so he's a pretty good guy. But he's part of our team too. He's been a little busy yet, so but I'm sure when the time comes that when we need his help, he'll be there. Okay, what do we got here? Since I'm a programmer type, I think source code. Big, yeah, it's big. It's a pretty big code base. In the scheme of things, I'd say it's medium sized, but it's a large code base. Ooh. Now, a lot of the stuff is actually not even part of drivers. The Scitech code base includes a GPL SDK. For any of you that are looking for a problem, you're looking for libraries that you can use that need some sort of platform independence, that you can be able to talk to hardware and all that sort of stuff. It's really an excellent SDK, and it's cross-platform, although we can only use the OS2 portion. But that's not quite true, since it's GPL, you can use whatever you want. You can even build them. And as long as you don't use the Scitech snap sources, you can build your own video drivers if you want. It's GPL. Code itself, 350 megabytes of space. I think that was about what it was. I think actually I got to go look at that again. I think that was a bit of an overestimate with the repository size.
Might be closer to 300.
What if I go
Pardon?
screen?
Might be closer to 300.
Yeah. But once you build something, you get another 50 megabyte of object files, so it's close. It's in that range. And the source itself is mostly C with a smattering of C++ and assembly. So, for most programmers, it's pretty approachable. The only thing that's really difficult is, and I'll talk about that a little later, is that they were very toolkit agnostic, which means they used whatever they used at the moment. You need about 5 or 6 different tool chains to build the thing. But that's, again, their customer base. They're a commercial outfit. Somebody comes to them and says, well, we use Metaware. Are you going to sell us something that I can build on Metaware? Sure we can. And they did. For our purposes, the vast majority of it is built with OpenWatcom. There's just some of the PM apps that use Visual Age. Okay, Thunderbird portable DLLs. What they are is, they are basically a DLL library that contains loadable object modules. In some ways, you can think of it as a runtime object library. When we do linking, we'll pull object files out of the library and merge them into the executable. This happens at runtime. So it's very efficient because it means you've got, if you look at your snap install, you've got a 10 megabyte BPD, which is graphics.bpd. Now that has every driver for every card that's supported. But you may only load a couple hundred K of that. So you end up with a driver that has a fairly small footprint. But you have an architecture that supports everything. Now the platform specific stuff is the glue. That's the part that makes it work with OS2. And there's combination stuff there. There's some DLLs that talk to the video subsystem, and then there's some executables for doing configuration, like GA control and stuff like that. Any of you who use Snap would probably use those things. And then, of course, there's a couple actual type drivers. There's like STD help, but the actual drivers that you stick in your base dev to fix this, that are Snap, are very small number. Well, most of the video stuff is what we call the grad drivers, which is an architecture that IBM's provided that says it's all the device independent and operating systems independent portion, or a vast majority of it, that you need to build a device driver. And platform specific stuff, they do VOS2 compatibility. They need an implementation of the BPD loader that talks to the file system for your platform, so that does that. And then there's the configuration and tuning tools. Any questions? Build environment. The best definition I have is highly structured and very complex, or relatively complex. But you're learning. If you're a developer, you should be able to learn that stuff. One thing that's a little different than a lot of stuff is they chose dmake as their make tool, which also happens to be the make tool for OpenOffice. And the reason they chose it is because it's cross-platform. There's implementations for everything. And it's a pretty good make. It does all the stuff you want it to, and our version seems to be pretty stable. I haven't crashed it. And it doesn't seem to have any capacity limitations the way they use it. And the tool chain, as I mentioned, you need a lot of them. You need your DDK, you need your OpenWatcom, you need Visual H 3.08. Eventually you're going to need 365 because we'll make it work with that, because not that many people have Visual H 308. David and I started to try to make 365 work, but something happened. And we decided just to use 308 for it because it was there and we knew it would work. And again, MSC 6.0, that actually comes out of the DDK, or some of us even have an MSC license from Microsoft. Mine's actually a little newer. For some reason, Microsoft came out with another OS2 release for their MSC after the last one that IBM had. I don't know if I can't really tell if there's any different set of bugs or anything like that, because it's only months apart. And NASM is again, one of these cross-platform assemblers, which runs on a lot of platforms. And other tools. What they do is, because they're cross-platform, they ship with binaries for most of what you would consider your normal command line utilities, copy, so on and so forth. That way, they know the stuff's going to work, and they don't have to worry about the stuff being installed. It's really similar in a lot of ways to how KBuild works. Any of you who've done any programming with KBuild, which is St. Albans' build environment, when you get it with a whole bunch of executables. And you got kcopy, kremove, kdelete, all this sort of stuff. And the benefit is that it's there and it works. And also he's got it hooked in, so he's fixed most of the command line problems, so you don't have command line length limits, which is always a problem with OS2 stuff. Now, the thing he did, Newt stopped working on K-Build, so it really doesn't, it's not fully K-Lib-C. In other words, if he'd switched over to K-Lib-C, you know, you would have no command line limits, because they have a new hook in there that handles that stuff. And basically, if you want to join the club, you know, just sign up for the developers list. We take applicants. We actually like applicants that do code, but, you know, we take applicants from anywhere. If you offer, you're probably on the list. And you need about a gig for workspace, but other than that, and the tools. But most, as I say, most of them are available, for instance, you know, Visual Aid. The DDK is, we can provide copies of that, and so on and so forth, for those that need it. And Visual Aid 365, you've got that on your ECS. So everything's there pretty much, we're easily accessible. Where are we now? Well, we're much better off than we were a year ago, because we started working on it again after a year. As of last year, where we were is the repository. I had my local workspace, everything was there, and sort of pruned it down and got rid of all the stuff we weren't licensed for, like all the Windows code and all that, and is waiting to be turned into a Subversion repository. Louis and I struggled over that because the server didn't like Subversion. And also these nasty people that forced him to put things like mod evasive in there really got in the way for a while. For some reason, his server is much more popular than mine, so he gets all these attacks.
It gets hit fairly often, and I also exceed my monthly allotment of DNS queries through Dyn DNS on
Yeah.
a regular basis.
Yep, yep.
It's pretty popular.
Well, we know what those are for. They were using you to do the stuff they did to kill, who was it, the DNS provider they did the DOS on.
DNS.
I
Yeah,
was dying, yeah.
yeah, that's right, you're dying, yeah. So, you know, you were a practice dummy. Happens. So anyhow, the Subversion repository is there, and the worst that you'll have to do is, if you have a DSL connection, you will have to tell him to not put you on the skip list for a while. Because what happens is mod evasive sort of watches how busy you are, but it's not really as configurable as we would like. Mod evasive is a Apache plugin. It's an Apache module that allows us, if somebody bangs on the server too often, it says, no, you can't come in anymore. The problem is it's naive in its configurability. You can't tell it, well, look, I know that I'm going to get banged on in the Subversion repository, and I know that these people are all authenticated, so I don't want you to check there. And, you know, we all say, well, we'll go in there and fix that code. But, of course, not
It's
today.
on the list.
Yeah, maybe someday we'll get to it. But anyhow, the repository's there, and we actually know it can be used by other people to build, because other people have built based on it now. David just recently put in the basic support you need to make it run faster, which is the NTRR/PAT and the SOP modifications. They're relatively untested, but it's the same code that's been working on Panorama, so it should just do the job. And there's alpha builds out there which have had big success in installing, but it's more because we really haven't looked at it yet. They work on David's machines. They don't work on his machines. I haven't tried it yet.
The T61 that I have with me for the Blue Line demo is running the Snap Alpha right now.
Okay. How's it performance? Are you running grad or accelerated?
Grad, because the chip in the T61 is not
Yeah.
chip.
Yeah. How does it perform relative to Panorama? Because David's
Not
first,
as well.
David's first statement says the code paths are way too long here. This is terrible. It'll never work. Now I'm sure in 3 months from now it'll work better, but you know that was his first impression. But
It
the
needs
real
some
reason,
tweaking.
pardon?
I've got
It
the
needs some
panorama.
tweaking.
Yeah, we got to figure out where it's slow. We just haven't put any time in there because I'm sure it's probably more than just code paths.
You want to talk about the SMD modifications?
About what?
The SMD modifications and why they were needed?
Actually, I'm not, he's the guy that can tell you the details. I know the MTRR PAT stuff. How many of you have heard the term MTRR PAT and know what it does and why it exists? Okay, well, for the rest of you. Okay, what happens is the folks that write video code are really dumb. They do the same thing over and over and over again. Now the problem with that is when you write the same pixel a million times, it takes you a million operations to get it out on the bus. What MTRR stuff says is basically, if you come at the same byte or same pixel fast enough, forget the last thing I told you to do, or the stuff I told you to do before, because I really didn't mean it. So it throws them all away, and they basically get to the bus, but they never go further out. So it speeds things up. It's basically, you can think of it as almost like a filtering method, because the old stuff doesn't matter anymore, and they could make the video drivers better and have them not do quite as much repetitive operations, but they don't. And both MTRR and PAT, MTRR stands for, let me think, memory, oh, I forget what it means. Do you remember what the acronym means?
Memory type range trace.
Yeah, and basically you say here, this range, if we throw away the older stuff. Anytime you get a new transaction, you throw it. And PAT is similar, it's a newer version of the same thing. It's similar program address translation.
It's higher resolution. Smaller section.
Now the SMP mods, part of it was to actually get the MTRR PAT information out to every processor properly. But I think there were some other ones. You want to discuss that?
All I did is the MTRR stuff.
It was all for that. The other, there were no other, technically there are no known SMP, not at this point in time, yeah. I think basically the real problem is back when McCall and all that crew did the SMC support, we simply didn't have ACPI drivers. The SMP that was out there was running with IOAPIC, which didn't do any of that stuff. So they had some hacks for trying to get the MTRR registers populated, and it just didn't work well.
And SMP was a server component, not thought of as a workstation. There weren't multiple processor workstations
Yeah.
that were popular at the time, so no one thought that anyone would need an accelerated graphics driver that was going to need to run multiple processors.
Yeah, well, the thing I often talk with people about with SMP is how over time it's really going to change the programming world, because we do not really do distributed programming yet. Okay, now, we use SMP, well, if the screen's over here, the WPS will run it for you where you got some compute-bound stuff. But what's really supposed to happen is you're actually supposed to do fine-grained work breakdown, where you got a little bit of the code running on this processor, and it passes the data across and all that, and you've got all this stuff like Petri nets and all that sort of stuff to do the scheduling and on-demand data and all that, but it's really not there yet. But that's when we're going to really start seeing computing get really powerful. Because up until now, basically, the only answer has been making the computers faster. But over time, we're going to learn how to partition the work, and it's going to be very interesting. Okay. Hey, what else? Here we go. What's coming? Well, someday we're going to do how-to guides for the developers. But so far, they haven't needed them because they haven't asked any questions, so I assume they understand everything. Except for David. He asked the question. He said, why can't I find this file? I said, because I didn't commit it. And he actually told me the file name, which made it easy. And then performance tuning to the level we do. It may turn out that because Panorama is so simplistic and does only grad, it's a point solution, and it may just always be faster than Snap, and we may just use Snap for the accelerate. Snap may be the preferred choice for acceleration, because Panorama will never do acceleration. Because even though it's general purpose, it only talks to one type of hardware, something that has a VESA bias. And those are sort of going away, which is going to be interesting. Or they say they are. I don't know how long it's going to be. Yeah. And we're going to look at, do what we can with the VESA performance on Snap. But it may just be that the architecture is not really tuned for VESA. But there are trade-offs there because it'll be easier, much easier with Snap to do things like HDMI support, split screen, even in a VESA environment. So it may be a trade-off. You want to run split screen, yeah, you'll have your computer, your video will be a little slower, but you'll have dual monitor support out of the thing. And of course, everybody wants the accelerated drivers. Then we'll see what happens there because we have now, up till now, we haven't even been ready to look at where we can find the I/O control portion of our accelerated driver. Because as David went over in his talk, how much did you talk about your device driver kits? Not really, not yet. Okay. This is something that came out of Multimac is a set of basically an architecture for doing both 16 and 32-bit drivers. That essentially you have a ready-to-use driver except you can't run hardware, and you just drop the hardware control in. Now, right now, it's focused on FreeBSD. Nope. What is it? I thought the way the library, you can still do the Linux stuff too.
The driver kits with the compatibility libraries.
Right.
Two separate things.
Oh, I thought that was all in the same library. Nope. Okay. 3 libraries now.
Yeah, different things.
Yeah, learn something every day. What I get for not looking at the code. Been looking at too much DB2 in this last lifetime. But I'm done with that now.
Lots to keep track of.
But how easy it is for us to provide acceleration is going to be a function of how hard it is to find code that actually does the acceleration already, and how hard it is to integrate or build up the compatibility layer. So we can just drop in code, because the way David explains it right now, he takes a FreeBSD driver, grabs this one section of it, drops it in, compiles, and he's got something that may work.
Yeah, it usually does.
Yeah, except for the ones that don't. There's always something.
Except for the ones that don't.
There's always an exception, you know. And who knows why, you know, it's one of those things.
I don't know why yet.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you got other things to do other than fix that one, you know, you go, whoops,
That's it.
and that's it. Any questions? Yeah.
Well, it's not a question. If there's anybody here running Snap and can't get DOS and Windows to work, I've gotten the DOS and Windows to work, okay? But I don't know if anybody here cares.
Yeah.
But if anybody is in that situation, see me.
Yeah. No, you should tell them. But there are tricks. Like, for instance, there are some systems where you cannot start a windowed VDM session. You start a full one, Alt Home, and it works just ducky. It's just weird. And what this is all it's not actually Snap that's the problem. It's the stuff that's not Snap. Because there's a ton. Remember, IBM provides vga.sys, vga.sys.
Right.
It's all the IBM code. Yes, it gets installed with Snap, but it's not Snap.
Well,
It's all part of that
You have to
grand
run
architecture.
DBGA, and you can't use the usual way of starting. You've actually got to have the program
Right.
that you're starting as win.com, and then your parameters, the program that you want to run.
Right.
Okay, that works. Full screen only, no
Yeah.
window.
But that's specific hardware, not every piece of hardware.
No, what I'm saying
Yeah,
is
that's-
it's the last of the cards that Snap has support for that have that.
Of this brand and model. Yeah, because like,
They were the last.
No, I understand.
Because all the bugs had been worked out of the ones before that because they were the earlier models. But the last couple of ones, that's where work stopped.
yeah.
And there you go.
Well, it's not just that, you know, a lot of times there was never any work done because there's this term we use called unsupported. Unsupported does not mean it does not work. It just means if it doesn't work, the chances of somebody fixing it are somewhat less than 100%. And what you're really talking about is you're using something that's unsupported. Because if it had been supported, they would have fixed the bugs.
Well, this is where it stopped. This was one of the very last cards in fact, it's the last card on the list, period. which is why I bought them, because also they're $8 a piece, brand new. I bought a couple, plugged it in, works great. Suddenly I can actually watch movies and things at full
Yep.
HD and all that.
Yeah.
Well, that part didn't work and bugged me for a long time until I figured out how it
Oh,
worked.
no,
No big deal.
No, it's good that you know that, but all I can really say is welcome to OS 2. You know, it's par for the course. Anytime you push the edge, you know, and also, as I tell people, just because something is written down doesn't mean it's right. Sometimes it takes a little bit of education to get them to actually believe that. Like having something not work for them. But, yeah.
Is the, you know, you got this code from whoever you got it from, is it still?
An outfit called Alt Richmond.
Right, now, is it developed independently of this here? Do they still work on a Linux version?
If you mean they did nothing to the code and you want to call that development, yes.
Okay,
They
but
developed it
nobody works on Snap anymore for any other reason outside of this environment here? Or what's the story?
No, we don't know. Here's the thing.
Because I had a Linux version of it, I think, at one point a few years ago.
Yeah, you can buy one, yeah.
Uh-huh.
But you're not gonna buy one now.
Right.
Basically, Alt Richmond is the current owner of the code. And they don't really talk to us a
Alt
whole lot.
Richmond's focus, as far as we know, is more on embedded systems.
Right.
Uh-huh.
So they use the Snap technology more for customers building set-top boxes and things like that.
And we don't know that they use Snap technology. They just take the driver code for the knowledge
Right.
it has about how
Right.
to run a
We don't know
specific
really
driver
how
set.
they use it. That was rumor has it that was what made Snap attractive to them.
Uh-huh.
That they had an application for at least some of that technology. But they have no interest in developing OS2 drivers or DOS drivers.
Or
So-
Or
Linux.
Windows for that matter.
as far as we know, no.
We never see, we don't see them out in that market.
So they were very happy to
See what
license the OS2 and DOS.
Maybe you could take
programs.
that market by storm, you know?
Where are they located?
If you're willing to
They're in,
develop for us.
Of course,
Markets
you need
are,
transport for it
it's
either.
easy to enter markets. It's much harder to develop for it.
It's free income as far as they're concerned.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Oh, yeah.
It's like
yeah.
fighting coal on the street.
There is someone asking on the chat, what about DisplayPort support? Is the same of HDMI? or?
When there's enough need, it'll happen.
Okay.
Everybody asks for everything, okay? But
It's
there's
on
only
the
so
list.
many of us that are actually gonna be able to do the code.
It's on the list. HDMI, DisplayPort,
Yeah.
and multi-head between them. That's
Right.
also on the list.
Yeah. And this is that trade-off thing. See, it may pay for us
One more thing that's
to put this out there for the display port so we can talk to so we can use a grad system.
If it's supported.
Even though it won't be as fast as Panorama, you'll be able to just plug your video in.
I ran the YouTube.
Oh.
See if I could
Will you be able to
Okay.
plug Panorama's better VESA support into Snap, or no?
We hope.
Well, maybe. It's more than that. The way
Not
it's
just
simply.
plugging it in?
I wouldn't call it better VESA support, because VESA it's just the BIOS it's talking about.
Right.
Let's see what happens.
I see.
Now,
But he said it was faster, right?
Well, no, what I said, no, I didn't say faster, I said David's initial assessment is the code paths for the Snap drivers are much longer.
I see.
Now, maybe it's only 20 instructions, but if that's all you're doing and you gotta do it millions of times, it starts slowing things down.
Right.
Now, can we do something to make those code paths shorter without sacrificing the benefits of Snap? We haven't
We
looked
don't know,
yet.
we haven't looked yet.
Mhm.
One thing, I always bring up shadow buffer. I don't even know if Snap does shadow buffer yet.
No, it does not.
Yeah, and you do that, and that's an incremental improvement.
That's true.
And did Snap have multi-monitor support?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And Zoom support.
Yes.
Yes. See, Snap has a lot of benefits, but because it knows how to do that for specific hardware. Now, the bad news is VESA has no clue how to do any of that stuff.
So if you're using Snap on a system that doesn't have supported Snap acceleration,
Mhm.
those features aren't available.
Oh, I see, okay.
Now, we simply don't know yet if we can do VESA BIOS to do the I/O, to get stuff out to the screen, and then use what we know about the hardware to do that other stuff, like to turn on the display port. Like one of the things that'd be nice here, this thing unlike my T42 where it has the 3 modes where I can have the video here and there, I get a choice. And I can only switch it at boot
At
time.
boot time.
And it'd be nice to have that feature back on T60s and newer ThinkPads. And the ACPI support's there for it, but there's no video driver support.
You won't have it on the newer ThinkPads because they don't have VGA ports anymore.
But, yeah, but I'm talking internal,
Yeah.
external screen.
Right, but
That's
the
that's what I'm-
external's HDMI, so
But even so, still can't switch it
yeah.
on the fly, you know.
Probably
But
not.
From my point of view, the HDMI, VGA, hey, that's just different ways of connecting the
Does
wires.
the external work from HDMI at boot?
I haven't tried it yet.
Well, we should
Yeah.
try that and
Yeah.
see. Typically, if it's supported in the BIOS, then you'll get the display on the screen. You just can't do the hot switching.
Oh, okay.
Out of the system
I misunderstood. I thought the
Yeah.
HDMI wouldn't work.
Yeah. Now, this thing
Okay.
is smart enough that if I have the video plugged in at startup, I don't even, it turns on the external automatically. Usually I plug it in after so I can watch the screen and all that sort of stuff, but I don't have to do that. If it's plugged in, I'm automatically external. It makes sense if you think about it. You know,
Yeah.
somebody plugs it into their port expander, powers it on, and boom, they've got their external monitor.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Once it's booted up, how do I tell the video card that I want to redirect the output somewhere else? That's where you need to know the video card and be able to tell the video card what to do. At boot, if it's set to automatically detect an external monitor, then that's all done before the operating system comes up. So.
Okay.
Here's a question about the development tools. How does a developer, what is the procedure for a developer to check this kind of Snap toolkit that you have set up?
Okay,
try to,
which tools are you talking? You mean the compilers? Or
no,
do you mean the SDK?
The SDK that
Well, the
you
SDK
organize.
is public, there's Snap
Okay.
and there's the SDK. Okay,
Okay.
the SDK is publicly available. Now, you can't use that SDK to develop Snap drivers. You have to use the same SDK that's licensed under the Snap license. But that's details. This is all legal beagle stuff. But the point is the Snap SDK has been available forever as a GPL. Now, what are you going to do with it? If you want to put it up on your GitHub, you can do that. If that's what you're looking to do.
No, but you were talking about developers that you need
Well,
someone
okay,
to
let's
join
back up. Yeah.
you and also check.
Let me go find the right page here. So we're all in. There we go. Now, which tools are you talking about? dmake and the DDK and all that sort of stuff?
No, that you were talking that that you need developers, or you can have developers to access the SVN and help to make drivers.
We have a Snap team. What's required
Yeah, okay.
to join the Snap team is contact us.
Okay.
There is a non-disclosure agreement that needs to be executed. That's part of our agreement with Alt Richmond. We don't let anyone look at the code without a non-disclosure agreement.
Okay.
And I will tell you this, that we have not turned anyone away
Okay.
who's come to us and said, I'd like to work on Snap, and I've not said to him, well, I'm sorry, no. We're not going to let you do that.
Yeah.
Because we have too much help as it is.
Okay.
So anyone who's
Yeah.
truly interested in working on the code, execute an NDA, and welcome to the team.
Okay.
Yeah.
We're glad to
And if
have
you actually work on the code too, as well
Yeah,
as
that's
join the
a
team,
real
that would be
benefit.
appreciated.
Yes, absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. It's nice that you're on the team, but if you work on the code too, that's really cool.
And there's an amazing array of stuff that needs to get done to turn Snap into an Arca Noae product. Just getting away from the code itself.
Oh, yeah.
The license agreement that we have with Alt Richmond says that references to Scitech need to be removed. So every reference that says Scitech Snap Graphics needs to change to say Arca Noae Snap Graphics for OS2. My daughter Rachel, who you've seen around here, is working on some of the images. So, the screen panel where it's got the logo that says Scitech Snap. Well, she's got an image now that says Arca Noae Snap that's got to be replaced in that logo.
Right.
The manual, the PDF manual for Snap, she's replaced all of the references to Scitech Snap. They all say Arca Noae Snap. but that documentation needs to get updated. Dan, you mentioned you've got a thing about DOS and Windows and running that under Snap. Well, those tips and whatnot probably need to be updated in that manual to make the manual useful in 2016, 2017. So there's all that stuff that needs to be done in order to wrap this into a real product to sell and not just a rehashed 1999 Snap bill,
Which we can't sell anyhow.
which we
legally.
can't sell anyway.
Yeah.
Right.
So is my assessment of soon availability a bit ambitious?
I would expect, well, look, the plan is that we're going to have an updated Snap. Now, how much updated, we're not sure yet, but we're going to have an updated Snap build in Arca OS 5. When will Snap then be available as a separate product to sell? Probably sometime shortly following the release of Arca OS 5.
What you're really asking about is how many new features will it have?
Right.
Because the documentation changeover is probably, what, 50% complete, something like that? Or maybe even a little bit more?
Well, depending upon what other features we add in the documentation,
I'm
maybe
just talking the
30%
existing,
complete.
because I'm assuming you converted from doc format
The
to open.
branding, yeah, see, that was the other thing. So when we got the source code, the documentation came over as Microsoft Word 6 documents.
Yeah.
That's all been converted to OpenOffice right now. Much to Alex's chagrin, because he would like us to switch over to LaTeX.
Yeah,
That's
I don't think,
exciting.
that's a learning curve. I don't
That's
think we're
a-
gonna do that.
But the manual and the other, some of the other documents, and there are build documents too that are still in Microsoft Word format that haven't been converted yet. But so there's all that conversion needs to get done. I lost my train of thought.
Oh, just how far along we are in the documentation.
In the documentation, probably 30 to 50% of the way through the documentation.
It's probably gonna go faster because now we know what type of stuff that we need to
Mhm.
look for. You know, we found the phrase 5 times, now it's a matter of going.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff can wait, like the developer documentation, you know, it can be rough because developers like it rough, especially for OS 2.
But even the license strings in the source code itself makes reference to Scitech Snap graphics for OS 2 and blah, blah, blah. And that really should get changed. When we make a change to one of those source files, that should really be changed to Arca Noae Snap graphics. So it's kind of, you know, just when you think that you've got a well-defined set of changes that need to be made, there's all this other stuff that you agreed to do because, yeah, absolutely, we'll throw that in. Of course we'll do that. Naturally, that's not a problem.
Yeah.
Just remember how long it took Microsoft to eliminate the last of the OS 2 error message.
There you go.
Exactly, yeah,
There you go. That's
Exactly.
exactly the situation.
yeah.
Well,
Just don't get the packet bubble. They're still there. I'm serious.
Oh, you mean
They
your
are still
NTs pop out error
Okay.
messages every now, OS2 error messages every now and
You
then?
get down at the packet level, there is,
Oh, yeah,
I was shocked to find one a few years ago.
oh, yeah.
let's wrap this up and move on to
Sure,
Martin's
sure, yeah.
demonstration. Thank you very much.